morning and welcome to Horizons. I'm your host, Paula Carey. Joining me this morning is James Adams. He's not only a Fort Hood soldier, he's also a poet. And you've put together some of your work in your collection, and it's called Put the Guns Down.
Right.
Let's talk about Put the Guns Down.
Put the Guns Down, this book was started in 1994. And I wrote the book because I was seeing a lot of our children that were involved with gang activities and all kind of violence. I wrote this book as a way to try to address issues like that and to communicate with them that they had options in their life rather than using guns and taking the place of violence.
Okay. Tell me about James Adams.
James Adams. I'm in the Army, been in the Army about 15 years now, and I enjoy what I'm doing. I'm a writer and a public speaker, and I'm on a mission to inspire and to change the life of at least one child during that process.
Okay. Now, you said this is not the first thing that you've actually written, that you've actually put together some other writings, but this is your first collection that you put together in book form.
But when I first started writing, I did a couple of articles for the Stars and Stripes in Europe. I did a couple of articles for the Shreveport Times in Louisiana, and I published a newsletter bi-monthly. But I'm gonna stop that in the summer of next year, though.
Okay.
Right.
I bet you get a lot of people saying, "Wait a minute, you're a soldier. You're not supposed to be a poet," you know, because I guess when you think of poetry, you think of gentleness. Not saying that soldiers can't be gentle, but you know, it's just kind of a contrast there. You get a lot of that?
A lot of people, when I tell them I'm a writer or a poet, you're right, they do seem surprised at times. But I don't think the demeanor of a person can tell that they're a writer or not. Poetry is a way of communication, and I try to communicate a message through my poetry. A lot of times poetry is about the flowers and the birds and everything pretty, but I've taken a different road with my poetry.
Okay, let's talk about the message of Put the Guns Down.
Right. The title to the book is Put the Guns Down, and a lot of the poems are based on real-life issues. And there was a kid a few weeks ago that stopped me at Belton Lake, and she was reading the book, and she said that she was reading the book in school, in Ellison High School in Killeen. And the book was something she could relate to. And with that, I was well pleased with this project here.
Okay, because I know when I was in school, you know, we had to read poetry, and it just wasn't something that I had to deal with every day.
Right. A lot of times poetry will cause readers to have to study the writer's intent and the writer's message. With me, I tried to write things that my readers could just pick up right away and laugh or frown or cry, whatever, without having to go to Webster Dictionary to research words and go into a lot of study.
Okay, let's talk about some of the experiences you've gone through, something that you feel like the people that you're trying to relate to in the book, that they have gone through that led you to write the book.
Right. Well, I work with kids quite a bit in the communities. And I think a lot of these things, for me, they started with myself because, of course, I was a child at one time. And I write about things like the fatherless homes, mothers not supporting their children as best as they could. And a lot of kids now, and I think our kids, they want to be helped, but they want us to go where they are for us to help them. We can't sit back, I believe, and trust the school system or whatever system it is and think, well, that's enough to help our children get through the world.
Okay. Well, I guess I'd really like to hear some of the works.
Okay. I'll read one poem to you. I call it I Wanna. In the background of this poem, and I give a background to kind of set a reader up for what they're about to hear, that when they start hearing it, their minds can go with me. I call this poem I Wanna. First, you know that I want to be rich and famous. I want to be a wealthy rapper, suave and dapper. I want to be a preacher, a policewoman, a mailman, or algebra teacher. I want to be a world-class athlete with natural skills and quick feet. I want to be a beautician, a farmer, a scientist, boxer, engineer, or electrician. I want to direct, I want to act I want to produce, I want to write, I want to dance, I want to sing. Mark Hubert Reed, I got my own thing. Forget the Army, the Navy, Marines, the stiff Scots, 3 squares and dried beans. I wanna. Someday I'm gonna.
That's great.
The thing there is that a lot of times we see people in our communities and in our walks of life, and they have that I wanna attitude. Then you see them 3 years later, and they're still saying what they want to do, never having taken any action to make those dreams or those I wants become realities. So this is one of those encouraging poems. Hey, if you want something, go out there and make it happen.
Are all of the poems some form of encouragement, or are they just encouragement and real life and, hey, this is what's going on out on the streets?
Right, that's what it is. And I think that street life, and there are some there in the book that are fantasy, but I think for the most part they are real. I have one I call here knowledge is power, or just knowledge, because there was a saying that knowledge is power. And I think that people must take everything they know to a higher level in order to be successful in this life. So the old saying, knowledge is power, it doesn't stop there. So in this poem I say, okay, you got this knowledge, but the important thing is how you use what you know, how you begin to, as one guy told me, to execute how you know, or what you know.
How have young people who've read the poems in the book, how have they reacted to them?
Most young people are quite sincere, and they are inspired just by knowing and be able to touch somebody that has actually done something that they can identify with. And they're most inspired by that, because the average person that tries to motivate kids will never have a chance to touch and really be a part of that child's development. But most of the time they are inspired, though.
And I guess that's important, being able to relate to them so they can relate to the poems as well.
Right.
Because it's one thing to see someone standing on a stage talking to them, and they know that once they leave that auditorium or wherever they're speaking to them, they're going to their big house or driving away in their big car, and and they don't know anything about what life is for them.
Right. And I think it's important for us to know exactly what their life is. Otherwise, we can't talk to them. If we can't talk to them, we can't motivate them. And if they're not motivated, then they become trapped in a vicious system. A system that sometimes is unsympathetic with them and is uncaring about them. So the thing I'm teaching people now is that we must write books and do whatever ourselves, and we must take proactive attitudes, not reactive, for a thing that we can't say, well, we have prisons now, and our kids in prison, let's go sit in prison. No. The idea that I have, let's keep those kids out of prison. That's being proactive.
Stay with us. We'll be right back with more Horizons. The poet.
Say the Army, I'm in the Army, and being a soldier has done a great deal. In my travels, I've met all kind of people, and they've all in some way done a lot to impact the person I am today. And that person is quite positive. And in my work here now, with my writing and my speaking, working with kids, this is how, because I've been where they are. I've been to the point where I thought nobody cared, nobody could help me, and I was unable to find my way. So being a soldier has done a great deal for my life. It allowed me to mature as a person. And I often say the Army, in some ways, being on my own, the world didn't ask me to grow up. It made me become a man. And I think one of the things that we have to understand about where we are in society now is that our young men are not developing to be men. They walk around with men bodies, but not men mentalities. So as a person, I've committed myself to what I'm doing now.
Okay. A lot of times people, I'm sure you've come in contact with these people who think this way. When they think of poetry and poets, they think of a white person.
Right.
But of course we have Maya Angelou, there was Langston Hughes and other black poets. Have you experienced some of that?
Well, one of the things that probably the poetry for African Americans was at its highest during what we call the Harlem Renaissance. And we had writers such as James Baldwin, Count T. Cullen, Richard Wright, and Langston Hughes, and those guys were all probably based in the North. And so they had a renaissance. The poetry from those guys were more accepted then. One of my goals, while I'm in Killeen in Texas, now I call myself, I'm a one-man renaissance now. If one person, we can start a fire with one person. And there are other people in Killeen that are starting to say, you know, I write too now. So now we're trying to get them to put that stuff where somebody else can read it. And some of my poetry is based on my personal experience. And I wrote that down, and every writer should, because my experience is not just for myself alone. It may help somebody else's life.
Because just sitting down talking to someone, they'll say, hey, that happened to me too.
Exactly, and I've had that occur. And I've had people that laugh. Oh, yeah, that sounds about right there. Yeah.
Can we hear some more of your work?
Yes, I'll read one now that I call Use or Lose. This poem is kind of based on biblical teachings. As it is written, the Lord blessed certain men with a measure of talent. One man straightway hid his on the ground. When the Lord returned, he told his man his actions were unsound. How does this lesson of yesteryear apply to black folks today? If we bury our talents, neglect to use them, we and those talents may decay. Right. So I often think that we are all pieces to a puzzle. If we had a particular puzzle of the state of Texas, every piece of puzzle represents a particular city or county, and say if Bexar County was not there for that puzzle, the puzzle would not be complete. So if we have black people or any people, and we are not doing our part, we could not be complete. We could not achieve. We will decay.
That's true. That's true. What has the reaction been from, say, young people who've read the book?
Young people, they like the book, but I honestly, I've had more opposition and more confrontation from older people.
Oh, really?
People that assume that they are above what I'm writing about, that think that they are above the violence. But I must say this, that in this society, we're all intertwined. We're all intertwined. My destiny affects the destiny of the next person behind me and that person in front of me. So none of us are above the violence. If that being the case, then most of us have alarms on our homes, alarms on our cars, and bars on our windows. But none of that is needed if we would first be real with ourselves, recognize the problem, and begin to deal with that problem. Last night, for example, on Tuesday, they had a meeting in Copperas Cove High School about gang activity as it relates to children. So they're starting to see this could be a problem.
And now they're starting to work on it.
Right, right.
Okay, but